Good afternoon, guys. My name is Shagun Fumi. I'm a trainer, technical trainer at Techie Academy, right? What I want us to look into today, right, is the M365 Admin Center, right? So this is where the administrators manages the organization's tenants, right? So it has to be, of course, only the administrators can access this particular part of the M365 sites, right? So quickly, this is the M365 Admin Center. This is the home page, right? Uh, and then you have your home page just set up like this, right? And then when you come down to users is where you have active users, all of the users in the organization, right? We have guest users, users that are already added to the organization's directory, right? And that's why they appear here. So I'm saying this because there are other guests, there are other external users that are not added to the organization's directory, right? But they would not be included here. So we rather refer to those set of users as anonymous users, right? And here we have deleted users, right? Users that are deleted, but not permanently deleted. So we always have the option to restore this from here, right? So example, if you check this box, you see the restore user option, right? Majorly, I want us to go into SharePoint, right? I want us to talk about SharePoint Admin Center today. So SharePoint Admin Center is where we manage not just SharePoint, right, but then OneDrive as well, right? So on the SharePoint homepage, you see what's easy to navigate through to here. On the SharePoint homepage is where we have on the admin M365 admin, that's where we have SharePoint, right? So we have all of technologies in here. We have Azure, right? We have Exchange, which includes Outlook, right? We have Teams. This is where the organization manages all of this, right? So coming to the SharePoint Admin Center is where we have active sites, right? So for SharePoint, right, you would know that it involves SharePoint is majorly the home, right? Sites that where the organization are able to share, collaborate on items, share documents easily and access them, right? You know, so we have active sites. These are the list of all of the sites that I have in this tenant. And through one of them, you see the name of the site, you see the URL, right? So if I need to access any of the site, I can just click on the URL of the site. It takes me to the site, right? But if I need to see details of the site, then I just click on the name of the site. It brings up the details span for me, right? Where I see general, everything as regarding the site. I see activity, right? What has happened in the previous times, right? Page visits in the last 30 days, right? Files viewed and edited in the last 30 days. You see all of the activities on the site. On this here, membership is where you see the owners, you see the members, you see the admins, right? In here, admins can easily add themselves in here to have maximum access to the site, right? Because depending on who you are in the organization, you have limited access, right? So for example, a visitor has very limited access, just a read access to sites, right? And that's how it was designed by default. Members have edits access by default, right? So we have all of this. We have all of this, and majorly deleted sites are the sites that have been deleted, but they are not permanently deleted. So it takes 93 days for a site to be permanently deleted. And sometimes sites are not permanently deleted, but they still are not appearing on here, right? So in cases like that is where we need to, do a restore through PowerShell scripting, right? So you use get SPO deleted sites script. When you run that script, it gives you the list of all of the deleted sites in the tenant, right? And then you are able to restore by running the restore scripts as well, right? So we have containers here, we have active containers, right? And then we have deleted containers, right? So these containers are used majorly to store our applications. If we have applications, kind of applications that we've designed, right? That we have. So this manages applications, right? Generally. And then we have policies, right? Policies for SharePoint, from the SharePoint Admin Center, we have sharing and then we have access control. This sharing is where we manage the organization's sharing and access control, right? So this is where the sharing, when you see that when this is on most permissive, it has anyone, users can share files, folders, link that do not require signing, right? So this is the most permissive level, right? When I drop it to the next level, that means not anyone can access anymore, right? That means if I share a link to another user, right? If these users are not added into my organization's directory as a guest user, they would not be able to access the item, right? So this is the option that allows anyone or everyone to access items directly using the link, right? But when constant guest, right, only the users that are added inside the organization's directory are able to access these items, right? So when it comes to existing guests, right, it's now the second layer to the least permissive, right? So this option, new guests that are added to the organization's directory that are added newly are not able to access share item, right? So this does not manage for just SharePoint. It manages both SharePoint and OneDrive, right? And when I come down to the least permissive, right, it means that even guest users in my organization are not able to access items that I share, right? So this setting is very, very important when it comes to sharing, right? And then there has been a little updates with sharing lately, right? So as I said earlier, right, when we talk about sharing, we want to know who is involved. We want to know if it is an external user or an internal user, right? So if it's an internal user, of course it's easier, right? But when it's an external user, you want to know if it's a guest user or an anonymous user, right? So who is an anonymous user? An anonymous user are users that we just want to share items to, but they are not added to the organization's directory as guest users, right? So this kind of use the most permissive sharing policy, right? They are only able to access items through the link of the items, right? You can't share directly to sharing must be on the most permissive for them to be able to access items, right? And then in here, we have more external sharing settings, right? We have all of these options. Limit external sharing by domain, right? So if there is a domain that we just want to, want them to be able to collaborate with our organization. So it means that domains, domain that I want a collaboration with, right? Then I can check on this box and add those domains in here, right? But mind you, if you're getting emails or you're getting items, not emails, you're getting items, another organization or another person is sharing an item to you, you would not be able to access if their domain is not added in here, right? So that is majorly what this is saying. And then the second option that says allow only users in specific security group to share externally, right? So if you toggle this box, it will require you to add the security groups inside of here. So it means that only users that are added inside of this security group are able to access whatever you share to them, right? Manage security group, right? I mean, only specific users that are added inside of this security group are able to share items externally, right? No other user will be able to share items externally if they are not added inside the security group here, right? So this option allow guests to share items they don't own is just as straightforward as it is, right? It's giving you the option to allow guest users, right, also share items that they do not actually own. So if I share an item to a guest user, the guest user through this option will have the opportunity to share, or the access rather, to share an item to another user, right? So guest access to sites or OneDrive will expire after how many days? So this is regarding sites, right? So if a guest user has an access to OneDrive sites, maybe the link of the site has been shared to the user, right? So this determines how long, right, the link stays with the user before it expires, right? So I can change the number in here, right? So it should be between 30 to 730, right? So I can enter whatsoever data I want, right? And on that day, be rest assured that the link to that site that has been shared would expire, right? The last option, people who use verification code must re-authenticate after this many days, right? So if items have been shared, they use a verification code to access the item, right? So they would not, after the amount of days that are input in there. So for example, by default, it's 30 days. So after 30 days, they would not be able to access the item until they re-authenticate again, right? So this is also, these settings are important to, guide what we want as an admin in the organization, right? So in here, we have files and folder links. So for example, we are sharing items to users, right? We are sharing items through links, right? Remember the set of users I said we share items to through links. They are the anonymous users, right? So if you are an anonymous user and or you're an admin and you are attempting to share an item to an anonymous user, right? For example, right, it says that choose the type of link that's the default. Do I want specific, when I attempt to share items through link, do I want specific people in my organization, right? Which means only the users only the people the users specify, right? So it means that the user who is sharing that link must specify users in the organization, right? Or is it going to be available by default to only people in the organization, right? So if I'm choosing this one, only people in the organization, it means that guest users, external users generally are not able to access the link, right? If I'm selecting anyone with a link, it means that anyone and everyone is able to access the link. Even if I have the link and I share it to another anonymous user, by clicking on the link, they are able to access. So majority of the time, we don't want to use this option, right? Because, you know, security reasons, right? Except there is an expiration date on that link, right? So currently, it was only people, so I prefer it that way, right? So the next one says choose the permission that's selected by default for sharing a link, right? So if you share a link, the kind of access you want the user who is accessing the link to get, is it a view access or an edit access, right? Choose expiration and permission options for any one links, right? So if you talk about sharing outside of your organization will expire after this date, right? Depending on whatever days I put, number of days I put in there, right? So there is a little confusion about external sharing currently, right? So previously, the way Microsoft users are able to access the link, especially when they use anyone with a link option, this option, right? They are just they're just required that they should enter a one-time password, right? And they are able to access the item, right? But currently, it's not like that anymore. To differentiate between guest users and anonymous users, right? Again, anonymous users are not added into the organization's directory. Guest users are added, right? So the current settings is saying that if anonymous users need to access the item, then they have to be on the most permissive. And aside from that, they can only access the item through a link, right? So you need to copy the link of the item and send it to them directly, right? So that's the way anonymous users are able to access items. But guest users that are already added to the organization's directory, right? They are able to access the item. They have a more linear way of accessing items, right, in the organization. So they are able to access items directly, right? Doesn't need that they are sent the link, right? Once you just click on share and then they receive the email in their inbox, right? They can click on the email link and then they are able to access the item, right? But it's not the same way for anonymous users, right? So the that change was made recently, and it's just to properly differentiate between external users, as I am, between guest users rather and anonymous user, as I said before, right? So when we come down here, we have access controls, right? We have unmanaged devices, right? Access from devices that aren't compliant or joined to a domain, right? So if we have a specific device that we want to restrict, right? So in here, we have the option to restrict those devices, right? So currently, this is not set up because we require a different level of license to access it. We require enterprise mobility plus security. That's E5, right? E5 license would give you, that's enterprise, the highest enterprise license that we have, right? It gives you enterprise mobility plus security. So it's required that I grant this particular user that license before they are able to make use of this option, right? But what this does actually is, if I have devices that I don't want them to be able to have access to my site, right? It will just require me to input the IP addresses of those devices, or maybe not the IP addresses, right? Or maybe their domain, right? So I do session sign out. So how long do I want? How long do I want my browser to remain on if it has been idle, right? How long do I want it to be idle for, right? That's what it's saying, right? So I have the option to set in how long, right? So if it has been inactive, if the browser has been inactive for about an hour, right? I want it to sign out of M365. So this is a way of restricting access, right? So you as an admin, you are right, take necessary measures to know at every time who are the people accessing a particular device, right? So if it's believed that if a device is left on for too long, right, without any activity on the browser, right, it means that possibly the user that has that was with that system before stood up, right, is no longer there, or you know, possibly mistakenly the browser was just left on, and you don't want any other user to access the browser just like that, right? Those are the scenarios whereby we use this option, right? So network location, right? So these are the ones that restrict from specific IP addresses, right? Apps that don't use modern authentication, right? So if you are blocking access from Office 2010 and other applications that cannot enforce device-based restrictions, right? So if you are unable to enforce device-based restrictions on some particular devices, right, you can decide to block the access from Office, right? So it's apps that do not use modern authentication. If they are old applications, right, then you can block them out with this option, right? So it could even be third-party apps, right? So you can allow access or block access, right? This is also important, for security reasons, right? We have OneDrive restriction, access restriction as well, right? So it controls access to users' OneDrive, right? So if I don't want any user in the organization or anyone to be able to access other users' OneDrive, but I want just a specific security group, users in a specific security group, then I use this option, right? Then I have to add the security group in here, right? So that's all for policies, sharing, and access control. We come to settings, where we see lots of settings, default settings that we can add at SharePoint and also OneDrive, right? We have settings regarding the home sites, right? So if I want to use Viva connections, right, with my home site, then this is where I ask for Viva connection experience. This is where I set for notifications, right? Allow mobile applications notifications about site activity, right? So if I want users that make use of mobile applications, right, to see notifications, this is where I manage them, right? I have pages, right? So this allows me to manage how user creates pages, right? And how user comments on modern pages as well, right? I have site creation, right? So I can I can make a default settings for site creation here, right? If I untoggle this option, right, users will not be able to create sites on their own, right? So all of these are important to tailor what we want as an organization from the admin end, right? I also have version histories, so set how many file versions are kept in SharePoint. So now this is saying that how many versions do I want to store, right? So for a particular file or a particular folder, the limits of the version that I want to be added, right? So in here, the settings is manually, and I have 500. So once once the version of that particular file starts to exceed 500, then the system begins to delete by default, right? So all of these settings are important, as I said, right? So this is notification, right? This is where I set to get notifications of my OneDrive site, right? About file activity, right? This is retention. How long do I want OneDrive to be retained for, even when users are deleted, right? Each user is assigned to a specific OneDrive account, right? So for this option, if the user is deleted, what happens to the OneDrive account? How long do I want the OneDrive to be retained for? And in here, I have storage limits, right? What is the default storage for each user's OneDrive in the organization? So by default, each user's OneDrive is assigned one gig. I mean, yes, 1 gig by default, right? So it is situations where they purchase extra licenses like Plan 2 license in general, right? That is when they have the option to increase storage limits, right? So if your organization is one that makes use of increased license storage limit, it means that all your users are on Plan 2 license. Then you can set a default storage for them for 5 terabytes and above. But currently, it's on 1 gig, right? Or for 5 gig rather. So currently it's on 1 gig, right? And that is default for the organization, right? So you understand that each user would have 1 gig by default until I go into the specific user's account and change that settings, right? I have OneDrive sync, right? So this manages how each user syncs, or the default sync settings for the entire organization, right? So it says, do you want user to show the sync button on the OneDrive website, right? So if I uncheck this, you would not see the option to sync from OneDrive website again, right? So I want to allow syncing from only a joined or on computers joined to specific domains. So if I toggle this option, it will require me that I enter the domain, right? So, and the other ones that are not connected to the specific domains are not going to be syncing, right? So all of these are important for the organization. So as an admin, you want to set up this, tailor this to, what your organization actually wants, right? How it benefits your organization, depending on, you want to consider how large the organization is, scenarios that you want within the organization, right? You have to put everything into consideration before you make any of the settings, right? And because of my time, I want to jump into migration, right? In here we have the options for migration. So if you are using file share, right, it means you can actually have your files on premises, right? When I say on premises, I mean on the local devices, on local folders, then you can migrate them directly using this option, right? So if I have my files on desktop, if I want to migrate, but I already have my files on the desktop, right? I found a way to get them to the desktop, then I use this option, right? So if it's a video I'm trying to migrate, then it's better that I use stream option, right? If it's coming from Google Workspace, right, there's an option to make use of copy your all of your items, right, from directly from Google Workspace to M365. Right. So Dropbox, generally Dropbox is used for copying content, right? So you can directly copy from Dropbox if you have your items on Dropbox as well into M365, right? And then one of the most important one is the SharePoint migration tool, right? So if your items are coming from SharePoint server 2010, 2013, and 2016, this is where you need to, download the migration tool that assists you to migrate these items, right? So as I said, all of these are straightforward, right? So here we have reports of data access governance. The level of access you have to the entire as a user, even as a user in the organization, it gives a restriction as regarding the access you have to to every other thing in the organization, both from SharePoint and OneDrive, right? So this generates reports, right? Where this is used, right, to monitor sites where users created new links in SharePoint site in the last 28 days. So the links that have been in the last 28 days, you would see, if you view this report, you would see all the details of all of the links that has been shared out from the organization. This is important because you want to know where your files has been shared to, and if there is an issue, you trace directly from there, right? So this is for sensitivity labels. Sensitivity label is a form of restrictions on files, right? So if I add a sensitivity label to a particular file, then it reduces the access that a user is going to have on that file, right? Even if the user is an active user in the organization, it reduces the level of access, right? So you want to make use of this report to view all the sensitivity labels that have been applied to files recently, right? And in here we have OneDrive accounts, reports for OneDrive accounts. So currently I have 3 unlicensed accounts, right? And it will show you the details of those unlicensed accounts, right? Why it is still active, because unlicensed accounts is supposed to be deleted from the organization, except another user has been another user with license has been added as the primary site collection owner of that OneDrive, right? So this will explain what OneDrive is, whose OneDrive it is, right? What date was it unlicensed? What is the storage on that OneDrive, right? Why is he unlicensed, right? For this one, owner was deleted from Entra. So as I said before, if the user is deleted, then the account becomes unlicensed, right? So for this last option, it says license is removed by admin, right? Right. This is a reason why the OneDrive would not be licensed, right? And then on here, what date was it unlicensed, right? So you have all of that detailed information here, even when you scroll to the left, right? And then what is blocking the retention, right? The deletion of the site, because it is safe to say that, or it is true to say that if a OneDrive is unlicensed for thereabout, it's deleted, right, by default, right? So why would the OneDrive not be deleted, right? So if I have a retention policy on that site, right, the retention policy is going to retain deleted items, right? So it would not let the item be deleted, right? So for example, the last option says not just retention policy, but also in Entra. That means another owner be assigned to this user. That's why the OneDrive is not deleted. Or the owner is still assigned to it, but it's just that there is no license on the user for that particular user, rather, right? So all of these are the options that we have on the SharePoint Admin Center and how we can effectively manage SharePoint Admin Center, right? We have advanced, we have more features inside of advanced. So when we come to user profile is where we can manage the profiles for all users, right? So for example, if I click on here, it opens a new tab for me, right? So I have the option to manage user properties, manage user profiles, manage user subtypes, and all other options as such, right? So if I want to manage user profile, I click on here, right? And when I come into this box, I want to select a specific user whose account I want to manage, right? So I just need to type some of the name. Then if I click on find, now it brings a user for me. I right click, and then I manage site collection owners, right? Inside of here, we would see the primary site collection owner of the OneDrive, and we'll see the secondary site collection owner of the OneDrive. In here, we have the primary site collection owner, right? The user who owns the account, right? And you can only have one user in this primary site collection, and which is primarily the user with the account, right? Inside of the site, secondary site collection owner, right, is where you can have the user that owns the account. You can also have another global admin, right? So this is for cases, scenarios whereby the global admin needs to access the OneDrive, maybe for troubleshooting reasons or to understand what is going on the user's OneDrive, right? As an admin, you can always add yourself inside of this box, and then you would always be able to have access to the user's OneDrive account, right? The way you have access when you come back to the M365 Admin Center and then you click on Active User, right? You have to select the specific user, right? And when you select the specific user, you would have the opportunity to, okay, so for example, this user is not licensed, right? So they don't have OneDrive, right? So for this user, Alex, right, we have the opportunity to manage his OneDrive from here, right? So I can create link to this user's OneDrive and access this user's OneDrive directly from here, right? This is because I've been added to Alex's secondary site collection owner, right? If I am not added, there's no way I would be able to create links to his OneDrive file, so his OneDrive site rather, right? So these are all of the options that you have as an admin, right? So I would be stopping this here, so we can just continue from here next time, right? Yeah. Have a great day today, guys. Bye.